Okay, 159ers, check it out, and don't forget to take notes and be bold out there today. I'm just making this quick video because I've gotten some questions that have to do with being able to add external, provided code to some of your labs or otherwise Eclipse projects, for example, for PA1. So yeah, here's the agenda. You should, as a prerequisite, already have done the steps that are outlined on the cross-section kind of resources page for your Eclipse setup that involve our check style configuration and our Java formatter file. And then just briefly here, we'll look together at the suggested file system paths and then adding a class file. So in terms of the file system paths, look at what I've done, okay? So I've got some kind of home folder. In the case of the lab machines, it might have your EID as the name. You can see at the top of the screen, mine is StewarMic as my EID, and in there I have like a desktop and documents and downloads and etc. But for this class, I have a root directory. In my case, it's CS159 F22, and then that has exactly 3 subdirectories. But what now? Directories, right? Subdirectories. So what are we talking about here? Directories and subdirectories when we're clearly over here looking at folders, right? So folder is the graphical metaphor by which we try to make it easy to navigate through the file system into directories and to locate files. But a lot of what we'll do since we're doing things, in programs is access files and directories programmatically rather than through a graphical user interface. And so we may not always refer to those folders as folders and sometimes refer to them as directories, which is the more sort of general term. You can follow this link in the slides to learn more. These slides will be available on Canvas. So yeah, anyways, I have these folders, a root folder like CS159F22. In my case, I chose to put it in documents. And under that, there's 3 different folders for this class. One is for anything that I download as some sort of temporary storage place that I know where to put things and where to find them. The next one is of some kind of folder that is for my Eclipse workspace. You don't have to name yours, as verbosely as I have. And with any luck, you won't have more than 1 or 2 instances of CS159 that you'll take anyways. And then after that, there's a provided code directory there. Inside of those things, let's see. Let me just pop over to that for a minute. Yeah, so inside of those directories, one thing that you might see is if you already have any Eclipse projects, then in your Eclipse workspace, you'll see a folder for that already existing. But another thing that you might want to do, so for example, for this lab 2 that you can see over here, I might just go ahead and create a, you can either do this when you're saving a file, or in my case, like right now, I'll just go ahead and do it now. I'm just going to go ahead and create a folder here called lab 2. So now when I expand, the relevant directory tree, you can see that there's, in the provided code, there's going to be a place for me to put this file that I'm going to download. So yeah, back to the notes here. In order to add some existing code to our Eclipse project, do note that in both the PA1 and the lab write-up, it does say to download some kind of class file. But note also what it doesn't say is anything else about that. Like you've downloaded them, check, move right along. It turns out, for example, in the lab case, that it's not until item 2.10 that it asks you to do anything with that downloaded .class file. Um, so it's at that point that I think the instructions are pretty explicit about what to do. I don't mind pointing to that anyways, but just a heads up. Do beware, and this may not have been as much of an issue for you in Python, the file names that you save things as really do matter. And so if you're supposed to create a Java class of your own that has a certain name, the file name will need to be that same name .java, and usually we'll expect that class name to be a capital letter, and therefore its file name should begin with a capital letter as well. And then likewise, if you have already tried these steps a few times unsuccessfully, you may have several versions of this class file downloaded and your operating system may have added numbers or something to distinguish between them. Those numbers would cause a problem eventually. So go ahead and delete any, failed attempts for this try. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and right click on this, class file. I'm going to do save as. It's going to say, where do you want to put it? And I'm going to say, no worries. I have a special place. I could just put it in my generic, 159 downloads so I can find it later. In this case, I want to go ahead and throw it into this lab 2 folder that I've just created. If I hadn't done that already, I could right now, click on this new folder button and give it that thing, give it a folder for this lab. But do note that where I'm saving it is not going to be underneath my Eclipse workspace. It's going to be external to the Eclipse workspace. So in my case, it's back over here under provided code. I'm going to throw that in lab 2. So I'm going to save that file. It says, is this the folder, this empty folder? I said, yep. And I can see it pop up over there. That's great news. And then what I'm going to do is continue on, and it says, let's use this Eclipse Skills project. If you don't already have an Eclipse Skills project, no worries. It just means that perhaps you either named it differently or did not get to finish or perhaps even start the previous lab. Do feel free to go back and do that lab 1 just to get you familiar with those parts of the Eclipse interface. So yeah, then as you come down and read and answer these questions, fill out your answer to what's going on here. And feel free to check your answers as you go to see what the author was expecting you might learn here. If at any point, we're not able to check we're not even interested in checking what you put for these. The idea is that you put in your own response to this question, and then when you check it against the author provided response, if you notice any huge difference, that's a question to bring back to the group. Bring it to lab, bring it to the to email or to the TAs or wherever you would like to get your questions answered. So it should be notable to you when you have something. It's one thing if you just word it differently, but if you have something that's rather different than what's written and kind of checking yourself, that's something that you should note and make sure you get that answered. Anyways, as you continue down through this, you'll eventually see on 210, it says follow instructions on our wiki to add the class file, right? And it says you can leave it there in that downloads folder. In my case, I didn't put it there in the first place. I went ahead and put it in a special spot. So I'm going to go ahead and open up this wiki page. Now note, my scroll bar is in the middle here. This jumped me halfway down the page somewhere. That's where we want to be. There's lots of other useful information on this page. You can read that at another time. In this case, it says that I need to have a directory external to my Eclipse workspace, which I have already, as you have seen. And I should download and put the file in that directory, which you've also seen me do. Then I need to open Eclipse, and I need to select a project. All right, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to see if I can keep these side by side. Let's see if it gets too small for us or not. So here's a project I can select. I want to click on project. You can use the project menu that's in the file bar or the Mac bar or whatever. I'm just going to right click on here and go to properties. That's the equivalent way to access that menu. And then it says to go to Java build path. So there it is. And we're just going to follow steps, right? So it says select the libraries tab. It says select the class path entry. And then notice there's so many wrong choices over here. So please make a correct choice. It says add external class folder or add external jar. In this case, we don't have a jar. That's a certain kind of file. So that's not our choice today. We want add external class folder, not add class folder or library, etc. Not external jar, not over there. Add external class folder. Yes. All right. Then where do I want to be? I want to be in my special folder here that I've created for this purpose. So let me just navigate on over to my provided code, to my lab 2. Your file system may or may not show this file to you at this point. Not interesting. We're not choosing that file. We're choosing this whole folder or directory right now. So I'm going to go ahead and say select, open, whatever the choice is on your operating system. And what I should see is I should see that it added exactly that folder that I wanted. So the folder's name was lab 2, and then this is the parent directories. If I expand, it doesn't show me anything particularly useful, but if I apply and close, then I can finally expand so many times, and I'm going to expand the reference to libraries. And finally, under default package, I should see that class file. Now, if you try to click on this file or even double click to open it up and make sure it's in good shape, it's not going to be all that helpful. That's by design. We don't need you to open this file up. It just needs to be there. So, no worries. If you have something that looks about like this, where you've got your source directory there and a default package, then it knows that this is a Java project, and so it's got the JRE, but it also knows that there's a reference library going on that refers to a folder in which you can find your class file. Then you're going to be in good shape, and that's going to be a similar setup whether it's for this lab or else if it's for the project. Don't hesitate to reach out to me with questions if you have any.